All right, it's Juneteenth, baby, and we got an adventure on our hands.
Wait a minute, hold up.
Welcome. My name is daljiimarax. If you're new here, if you aren't new here, as you can see, my channel is a bit all over the place because we're rebranding. So basically, we are black, bougie, and on a budget. What that means, what I'm rebranding this channel to is semi-vlog, semi-traveling. What I want to accomplish here is two things. Numero uno, I want to glamorize domestic travel. Yes, I have plans to go internationally, but I feel like as a people, we feel like you're not well traveled unless you're going to Dubai, unless you're going to Jamaica, unless you're going to Italy. Baby, who got money for that?
What am I supposed to do for money?
Like, let's be realistic. You can hit those places and not be, you know, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, but most of us got jobs, so we can't be taking all that PTO off. And then on top of that, I also want to let people know that you can be well traveled and work a 9-to-5 like me. Okay, so that's what we're gonna accomplish here on this channel in this rebrand. We are black, bougie, and on a budget. And I want y'all to see, you can go and see a lot of things that are inside of your home state or in the next state next to you. You don't gotta go to Jamaica to be well traveled, okay? Because let's be honest, most of these people that be traveling to these countries, they doing the same shit. They sitting on a resort, they getting on the jet skis, they going zip lining, they lay it out on the beach. You know where you can do all that? In Miami. You know how I know? Because I've done it 3 times. I don't need to go to another country to do that same shit. But anyway, back to this video. It is Juneteenth. I did not intentionally book this trip for Juneteenth, but it just so happened that this was the weekend I could do it because I have a job. Like I told y'all, I have a 9-to-5. That's the point of this video. We're going to show y'all how you can manage your time and travel. With that being said, I want to visit Plantations. I've been living in Georgia since 2014, and this is the South. This is where our ancestors were enslaved by the colonizers. And I've always wanted to, you know, visit one and, you know, just learn the history of it and see where my ancestors came from and learn a little bit about the history of where they lived. And it just so happens to be Juneteenth. So I feel like this was a great way to, you know, the great day to learn about my history, because the whole purpose of this holiday is because the enslaved black people in Galveston, Texas didn't know for 2 years that slavery was over. So they was, you know, unfortunately enslaved longer than they should have been. So I was like, let me learn about a little bit more about history. Fortunately, I live in the South, so Plantations ain't but 30 minutes away. Not that that's a good thing, but I don't gotta really travel far, unfortunately, because I live on the land where enslaved people were. So all this ranting, we are gonna go to Roswell, Georgia. I'm gonna leave my beautiful town of Atlanta and go 30 minutes to Roswell, Georgia. Let's go. Hey, what's up? So, unfortunately, I did not have my tripod with me because I didn't get it until the next day. So, a lot of the footage in the first plantation, I visited 3 plantations, is shaky and it's sideways because I didn't realize that, because as I was recording, I wasn't looking through the lens, I was looking in real life. So it's a bit shaky, and I'm gonna have to narrate this so you guys can understand what's going on, and I can tell you the history of the plantation itself, and, you know, all the rooms and all that, because I did not realize that this footage was going to be this trash. But I do know the other 2 tours of the other 2 plantations, that footage is a lot better, and any other vlog that comes after this specific vlog, you won't have footage shaking and looking crazy because I have a tripod now. I was just holding the DSLR before, now I have a tripod. So let's get into the video, boo. Alright, so first up we have the Bullock Hall. This is located in Roswell, Georgia, just like the other 2. And baby, this was my least favorite one, and you're gonna see why. So is the furniture in here like original, or are some of these kind of like, okay?
The Bullocks lived here for 17 years.
Okay.
1838 until 1839 actually, until 1856.
Okay.
And so when they left, they took all their stuff or they gave it to people. So this is just period furniture that was bought at different places. It is all antique furniture from the period, but none of it belongs.
None of it is. So everything is just a period piece. Nothing is original. So yeah. So look at this. This is the master bedroom. So Bullock Hall, the owner of this house, his name was Archibald Bulloch. He was a lawyer, a soldier, statesman from Georgia during the American Revolution, and he was the first governor of Georgia. So he was like one of the OG settlers of the Atlanta area. He married a lady and they had 3 children. Maddie, and I forgot the other 2. One of them died, Irvin, I believe his name was Bulloch. He died very young, and then the other one fought in the war, I believe. So this house was built by slaves. It was built by the slaves that they owned, but it was architected by someone named Willis Ball, who also created the other plantation that I'm going to go to next. So while this house was being built, the family stayed on an abandoned home nearby. It was a Cherokee farmhouse, actually, while the slaves, you know, trained and built the house. So in 1839, the family moved into the house when it was done. So they was vibing and chilling while slaves was building this house, child. So, you know, once it was built, the family lived there. They had about 30, a couple of, maybe not 30 slaves, but they had a couple of slaves that lived on this specific plantation with them. And yeah, so they had 2 little sons, and one of them died, unfortunately. Well, not unfortunately, these people was racist, so I don't even care. And then upstairs in the room, they had this little room which showed, you know, a lot of fun facts. Well, I don't know if they're fun, but a lot of facts about the Civil War. So this is what that room consisted of. Like I said, nothing in this house is original. This is just a mock-up of what this plantation looks like back in the day. It was sold to the city in the 1990s. And yeah, that's basically it about that one, child. This room is just, I guess, a whole bunch of facts about the Confederacy. All y'all need to know is they lost. Child, so then I went downstairs to the basement of this house. This is where their kitchen was. And I can just imagine how miserable a life as a slave was just based off of this kitchen. So one, as you can see, this is Atlanta, Georgia. There ain't no air conditioner. You cooking in the basement, in the hots. Women wear long sleeve dresses. Oh my gosh. So I'm just like looking at this and I'm like, you know, showing you guys the setup of what this would have looked like had a, you know, when the mammy would be doing the cooking for the family. It also showed, you know, had a little display about the laundry that goes on. Laundry wasn't no joke. Doing laundry back in them days, baby, was work, physical work. So, and these people did this until they died. Like, there was no retiring unless you bought yourself, you know, saved up enough money, however much that was, to free yourself. You was a slave until you died, boo. This family owned you forever. You was their property. So I could just imagine cooking down here with roaches and rodents, and it's hot as fuck, and you got this family that's like, this had to be such a miserable life. I think this is where they would fold the clothes and stuff down here, hang up the pots and things of that nature, and then a seating area. And look at this thing of cotton right here. Like, let's come down here. Probably so scary to come down here at night. Boy. All the food. Like, imagine these big ass Atlanta roaches and rats and shit down here. Boy, nah. So another storage unit for all the food and things of that nature that they gather from the land. So that's down here. Let's go back up there. Oh, okay.
So these 3 buildings are on the footprints of actual structures that were there.
Okay.
2 slave cabins. The one straight ahead is just an office, and it's not.
Oh, okay.
This is the old carriage house, and this is a reconstructed slave cabin that's interpreted as a slave cabin, and it has a little exhibit in there.
Okay.
So you can go see that. And then that's
it.
much
Okay. Yes. Okay. So then I'll go hit the other two. Thank you so much.
You're
so
welcome.
much for your time. Thank you. You have a good one. Look at all this greenery over here that the slaves were working in. I'm definitely walking down there. That's their bathroom. This is their outhouse. This is where the slaves went to the bathroom. Look at all this land that they had to work on. And that's a little bit about that one. That was a smaller farm home, not necessarily a plantation. It was more so a farmhouse, a rich family, upper class family that owned slaves. So they didn't own a plethora of slaves as property. They just bought some from a bigger plantation, probably. So let's move on to the Barrington Hall.
Volunteer dose, so welcome to Barrington Hall.
Hello.
The city has owned the museum since 2000. His daughter, Eliza Hand, Barrington's sister, who was a young widow, and Daddy told her he'd build her a house. So looking at so the oil lamp under the cornice is original, and the knobs and keyholes are original. The bell was installed 50 years later.
That looks pretty good.
Yeah. And these are technologically color embellished and large pictures of Barrington Catherine. We'll see the smaller black and white.
Okay.
Originals. So next we're going to the family parlor. This is usually our hands-on area for non-pandemic times, where there's a dollhouse for children to manipulate. And here on the mantle, we have some pictures over at the piano of family members. And there's a smaller image of this picture, but this is the clapboard kitchen building that was in the backyard. By the contrary, you might have seen some stone steps.
Okay.
I wondered what they were for, and they went to that outdoor kitchen. Like many southern kitchens, accidents happen and it burned
down. Yep.
Yeah. So anyhow, this is a piano from the 1800s. That someone in Spain downsizing came to the city. So this is all furniture that's been donated, not belonging to the family. So that's why it's like the hands-on sitting area.
Gotcha.
Waiting for a tour. This is the King crest from Roswell King's family. He married Catherine Barrington, so they named their son Barrington King after the mother's maiden name.
Okay.
And in former times when people weren't literate, they would recognize a name and ask the person that they were related to somebody else. So the 1800s was a time of a lot of communities getting established, often by somebody's last name. And, treating people that weren't from the community. When you had a name, similar to the maiden name of the mother or something, it would help.
Okay.
So this is the master bedroom. It is on the northwest corner of the house, so it would be cooler in the summer and in the winter. So Barrington Catherine would have a total of 12 children. Of the 12, 9 survived. 2 died of yellow fever. That was another reason that Roswell thought it'd be a healthy place to live, because yellow fever is rampant in South Georgia, and some of his grandchildren dying, But anyhow, that cabinet was constructed by the slaves.
Okay.
Mill. So it might have been a storage cabinet of threads or materials. It had a base with the cabinets in the middle, and then sandwiched under the top molding. Was all one piece. So it was inlaid and constructed. And when danger was imminent in the Civil War, Barrington Catherine would take their belongings, from the house, and they would travel south. They had a son, the Reverend Charles King. He married Anna Wiley Haversham. And he was a Presbyterian minister. He went to University of Georgia and then Princeton School of Theology, which is across the street from Princeton University in New Jersey.
Okay.
Just across from. This is known as a Topsy-Turvy Doll. This is slaves made those dolls. And there's a book called Racial Innocence by a woman that talked about the history, and that they were, she believes that they were subconsciously expressing equality.
Okay.
And that the bodice was made tight to suppress sexuality because they were victimized.
Yeah.
Sexually. And she even talked about there was a certain flume for drying your ink off the pen, which you just like insert the quill in the underskirt of the doll. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Different things, you know what I mean?
Gotcha.
You know. But anyhow, these are sleeve finishings that were also sewn by slaves, that a woman would wear a dress with 3/4 sleeves, and then for going out presentation, add the finishings. And this is their son. This is general store in downtown Marietta, and one of the slaves is pictured in, you know, that scene. It was taken after Black History Month, and it just always left up there.
Okay.
And then this is those original pictures of Barrington and Catherine that were color embellished out front. This is a letter sent about Thomas, and
so the furniture in here isn't original.
well, the bed is original, and I think the crib and this rocking chair was original. The canopy of the bed was in the attic when there was an attic fire in 1989. So what they had to do is they found someone who would rebuild the canopy. They sent the bed to Kentucky. We had a loaner bed, so anyhow, we got the, you know what I mean? We put the bed back up. So, but you know, certain. This room has the most original furniture.
Okay.
Because afterward, descendants did not want to sleep here, knowing that Roswell King died here, and Barrington King died
in there. Gotcha.
So there was some suspicious.
Gotcha.
And probably no one else want to take the bed out of the house. There's someone dying. Yeah. Here we have a picture of George Washington, just because that was a classic thing in homes in the 1800s. That was part of home decor.
Yeah. So were most of the plantations here built like the same? Because this looks like just like the Bulloch House.
Like I said, master craftsman Willis Ball from Connecticut was commissioned to build the houses for the community. So this was an in-town dwelling house. It wasn't really a plantation.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They had several acres of land, and they had, you know, I know there was hog farming and you know, just different things that was sort of off-site. They had some local, you know, fruit produce on the property, like blackberries, summertime grapes, strawberries, peach trees. But it was more offsite. This is to me, they were building like an in-town dwelling community. The room of their daughter, they had one surviving daughter, and her name was Catherine too. So with a mother named Catherine, grandmother named Catherine. She went by her middle name Eva, and Eva for short. And Eva married a Presbyterian minister who was well-traveled. He sailed from Florida to California, and he started the first Presbyterian church in so this is Evelyn as a young girl. She lived till 1960. This is Catherine, her youngest sister. Catherine finished school and went on to become a teacher. So Catherine would be teaching school in Atlanta. This is her rulers and school bells. And she would be approached by a columnist, Margaret Mitchell, who wrote an etiquette blog. So Lois needed a hip surgery after that. So she would sell 3 acres to the south, where the shopping center and the cul-de-sac development are.
So what I've learned from these 2 plantations that I went to is they weren't necessarily plantations to a T, like what your traditional plantation is of, you know, a slave owner owning a couple slaves, having them working, blah, blah, blah. They did have that, but it wasn't to the extent of what you would think a plantation would look like. Like your interpretation of what a plantation is, these 2 were not those. Not to say that these were nice white people to black people. They were very much racist. Black people definitely worked here as their mammies and building things for them, taking care of their land. All the things a slave would do. But these aren't your traditional slave plantations. These ones are not. So I'm going to try to go to the Smith house, which I couldn't find the first time because the lady taught me how to get there. So we're going to see what they talk about, because I really want to see that plantation. She said that one was more like a farmhouse. So let's go see. So I was able, like I told y'all, the footage was going to get better. So for the Barrington Hall, this one was very interesting to me. And it's so wild that the family lived in this house until 2005. As in generations and generations and families and friends of this Barrington family stayed here until 2005. I was alive then. Like, that's wild to me. So this house, Barrington, the person who owned it, his name is Barrington King. So Barrington King is the son of Roswell King, who is the founder of Roswell, Georgia. So Roswell is a city in Atlanta, north of Atlanta, and they're the owners of that. So Roswell, when you in Atlanta and you hear Roswell, that's the slave owner. When you hear Dunwoody, that's the slave owner. So that's what those names come from. So Roswell, so Barrington King was the son of Roswell King. So Roswell, Georgia, Roswell King and Barrington King both founded Roswell, Georgia. So what happened was Roswell King, he was from another part of Georgia, I believe, and he was a plantation manager. So he worked on a plantation where they had like 500 slaves. So he worked his way up and then eventually created his own cotton mill and Roswell Manufacturing Company. So this was a cotton mill and an industrial complex. So he married a woman, Catherine. They had 8 kids, like 7 girls and 1 boy, or the other way around. Yeah, it was 7 girls and like 1 boy, and they all living through their adulthood. So with Roswell King, the dad of Barrington King, who is the owner of the Barrington Hall, he owned about 50 slaves because he needed them to create his manufacturing company. He needed them to build and to work there. So he bought, throughout his lifetime, him and his son owned about 50 slaves. And then once he got into his elderly years and, he could no longer run the business, he just sold them. So that's kind of how, like I told you guys, like these are not like plantations where they have hundreds of slaves living on them. These are people who are wealthy and bought slaves to come work for them and do their labor, whether it's they're working at their house, working, for their companies, like his industrial complex and cotton mill. They was working for it. They were doing labor for his business. So plantation slaves don't just work on the plantation specifically. They can get sold to do other things. So slaves also built this house. These are the 2 houses that were built by Willis Ball. So that's the guy that built the other house before this, the Bullock house. So he built this house as well. It looks basically the same. This one, like I said, this one stayed in the family. So like when Barrington died and his wife died, their kids took over it. And then when they died, their grandkids and kids took over it. And they just kept, keeping it in the family. And once around like the 1920s, one of the great grandkids wanted to sell it because I guess it was too much work. Like this plantation is huge. Like not the plantation itself, but the land around it is a lot of field. It's a lot of acres. So I guess it was too much and too expensive. So one of the grandchildren like saved up enough money, I believe, and had was able to keep it in the family. So this basically stayed in the Barrington King family until 2003 when they sold it to the city of Roswell. So that's so wild to me how white people are able to continuously keep things in their generations on and continue the wealth because they had the heads up. Like they owned 50 slaves. Like this hall, Barrington Hall, was built in 1839. So this stayed in the Barrington and King family from 1839 to 2005. Is that not crazy? So that's enough about Barrington Hall. We're gonna move to my favorite one, Smith Hall. So let's get into this one. So this is the Smith Plantation. So the Smith Plantation is by Archibald Smith, another Archibald. Him and his wife, and I think they had 3 kids, lived here, and they moved here in 1845, and they built this house. Well, they had their slaves built this house, and they had about 30 different slaves on this 300-acre plantation. So this one is more of the farmhouse tradition. This one is like when they was really like working, like they had slaves working on this thing, child. This one out of all 3 of the plantations had the most original furniture. So basically majority of this stuff that is in this house, from the furniture to the knickknacks to the decor, all of this was owned by the people that lived in this house. Like this family, this is all of their shit. It's just a little, maybe, it might be a little bit of tuned up and all that for the sake of, art depreciates and, I mean, not depreciates, but, it can get worse over time. So they probably had to fix some of the things up. But for the majority, this is the most realistic and the most authentic plantation out of the 3. That's why I like this much, because like this is really, I'm inside this, like for real. So the Smith's eldest son, Archibald Smith's eldest son, was killed during the Civil War. So he was killed young, and he actually died in one of the rooms in there, I believe. And then in 1986, when the family's descendants sold the home to the city of Roswell, the family maid, Mammy Cotton, was allowed to stay there and live there. So she lived in there to the late 1990s. I believe I was a baby when the Mammy who lived in this house died, like literally. So you'll see some of her room. So this is in the same area of the Bullocks and the Barringtons. This is only about a mile away. 3 generations of the Smiths lived in here until 1981, and then after that the Mammy was allowed to live there, like I said. So this one is what you would call like your working farmhouse. So behind the house there's 11 buildings right behind the plantation. There's a cooking house, because a lot of the cooking wasn't necessarily done in the home. It's usually done either in the basement or in a separate kitchen building behind the plantation. Like when slaves are working, they're working behind the plantation. They're not necessarily inside the house. You know, we know the difference between like a cotton slave and a house slave, but even then the house slave wasn't always necessarily in the house. It was probably in a house that's behind the house, a little shed that's dedicated to certain things. So often, you know, in this one specifically, so there was a cooking house, so a kitchen that was behind it. There was a carriage house, a barn, a slave cabin where they lived, corn crib, all things of that nature. So all of the work that got done from anything that the slaves were supposed to do got done behind the house in a separate shed from the house. So that's that on that. Behind the house, I believe, was the largest oak tree ever, and then lightning struck it and then it fell down and it's no longer there. And then the 2 sons of the Archibald Smith and the wife, they both served in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. And this one, and I believe the other one, the Barrington House, are like original. These are like classic antebellum plantation. So that's when these ones were. So y'all, I hope y'all enjoyed today's vlog. Like this trip meant so much to me, because it's like, it's one thing to read about slavery. You know, I grew up in the Midwest, so there wasn't necessarily slaves to the extent here. There wasn't necessarily plantations and whatnot. So to live on the land that slaves lived, like, that's so crazy to me. So I'm happy I got to see, not just, you know, read about them from, you know, history books and things, but actually be on the specific land in the house that they were in as well. And it was just so moving, like how far we have come. Like, that is wild to me. Like, these white people owned human beings and had them doing their work. Like, imagine having to cook and clean and take up after somebody in hot ass Atlanta, Georgia, with all these big ass roaches and the ginormous probably rats and whatnot that was all up in that house. And then you got to teach their kids, and you got to raise other people's kids, and you ain't got no, like, I don't know how they did it, but I would be forever grateful to be alive. I wouldn't be alive without them doing it. So I just never take my life for granted, because like these people had to go through, my ancestors had to go through all of this. Like, I'll be about to walk into the mailbox and they was out here cooking in a shed in probably 100 damn degrees in a long dress. Anyway, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. I am going to do more travel vlogs. If you want, hell, I'll go to more plantations. I do live in Georgia, so these were just the ones that was in Atlanta. I can go outside the city for real, and get into the nitty-gritty plantations if y'all want that. But, you know, I have some, you know, outtakes a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed those. And I will see you guys in the next travel vlog movie. Don't forget, we is Black Bougie, but on a budget. All right now.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace